If your hydrangea has turned into a massive, beautifully lush, and entirely green bush without a single flower on it, I have some news that might actually bring you a sense of relief. Your plant is not sick. It is not diseased. It is not planted in the wrong soil. And you do not need to run out and buy expensive chemical fertilizers to try and force it to bloom. The truth is much simpler, and it is something that happens to the most dedicated and caring gardeners. Sometime last year, probably in the fall when the weather started to cool down and you were tidying up your yard and patio for the winter, you gave that hydrangea a haircut. You went out with your best intentions, wanting to neaten up the garden, and you pruned it. But you pruned it at the absolute wrong time. Today, I am going to show you one fatal mistake of fall garden cleanup that unknowingly sends all of your future flowers straight into the yard waste bag. I am going to give you a clear, easily understandable deadline.
And best of all, we are going to walk through this together at a comfortable pace and find next year's flower buds hiding on your branches right now. By the end of our time together, you will never have to guess about your hydrangeas again, and you will be able to enjoy a garden full of blooms without any backbreaking labor or unnecessary stress. Most of the advice you find on the internet or in gardening magazines tries to force you to memorize complicated rules. They give you charts and pruning schedules that feel more like a chemistry exam than a relaxing afternoon on the patio. We are going to do things completely differently. Gardening is supposed to be a peaceful, rewarding experience, especially as we have more time to truly enjoy our outdoor spaces. We are going to look closely at the beautiful biology of the plant itself.
Once you see with your own eyes exactly where the flowers are hiding, the rules will disappear, and the natural rhythm of the plant will make perfect sense to you. You will never make a pruning mistake again because you will understand the plant, not just follow a blind set of instructions. But we do need to be a little bit careful because the very thing that will save one type of hydrangea will completely ruin another. So let us take a few unhurried moments to figure out exactly what kind of hydrangea you have growing in your garden or sitting in that beautiful container on your deck. There is a simple fork in the road when it comes to these wonderful shrubs, and everything we do depends on which side of the path your plant sits on. There are two main groups of hydrangeas, and they operate on completely opposite schedules. Before you even think about picking up your pruners, you need to know which group you belong to. The first group is what we gardeners call old wood bloomers.
These are the plants that form next year's flower buds in the late summer, right on the stems that are already standing in your garden today. This is the group that has a ticking clock, and this is the group that requires our attention right now. This family includes the classic big leaf hydrangeas. Think of those glorious, giant, round mop heads you might remember from your mother's or grandmother's garden, in rich shades of blue, vibrant pink, and deep purple. It also includes the elegant lace cap varieties, which have a flatter, more delicate ring of flowers, as well as the mountain hydrangeas and the stunning oak leaf hydrangeas, which are very easy to spot because their leaves look exactly like the leaves of an oak tree. If you have any of these in your garden, your window of opportunity is open right now, and it will be closing very soon. The second group behaves in an entirely different way. They bloom on what we call new wood.
These incredible plants wait until next spring to form their flower buds, and they produce them on brand new green growth that has not even emerged from the ground or the main stems yet. For this second group, picking up the shears right now would be a terrible mistake. Their proper pruning time is late in the winter, when the plant is completely asleep, which is many months away. This group includes the panicle hydrangeas, which you can easily recognize by their large cone-shaped flower heads that often fade to a beautiful dusty pink or rust color in the fall. The famous limelight variety belongs to this group. It also includes the smooth hydrangeas, which are known for those massive, pure white snowballs of flowers, like the beloved Annabelle. If this sounds like the plant sitting in your yard, you can take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and simply enjoy the rest of the summer. I will tell you exactly how to care for them a little later on. But for now, you have absolutely no heavy lifting or urgent tasks to worry about. There is also a third group, which is wonderfully forgiving, known as the rebloomers. You might know them by names like Endless Summer. These are the easygoing members of the hydrangea family because they actually bloom on both old wood and new wood. They give you a little bit of grace, and they have their own very simple, low-stress guideline that we will cover as well. So, how can you quickly test what you have, especially if you just moved into a new home, or inherited a garden and the shrub does not currently have any flowers on it to give you a clue? If the leaves are large, round, and somewhat shiny, or if they have deep lobes like an oak leaf, you are almost certainly looking at an old wood bloomer, and the clock is running. If the flowers, when they do appear, are shaped like long cones rather than round spheres, you have a new wood bloomer, and you can put the tools away. But what if there are no flowers at all, and you are just looking at a mound of green leaves? Here is a gentle, expert trick that can save you a whole year of waiting. Walk out to the plant and feel the leaves. The leaves of a big leaf, old wood hydrangea, tend to be thicker, fleshier, and have a slight waxiness or gloss to them. Their stems are often quite thick and robust. The leaves of a panicle or smooth hydrangea, the ones that bloom on new wood, tend to be a bit thinner, more matte in their finish, and sometimes have a slightly rougher or fuzzier texture. The stems on newer growth can sometimes feel a bit more slender or wiry. Just by taking a moment to touch the plant, you can usually piece together the puzzle without ever seeing a single petal.
Now, let us talk gently about why this late summer deadline exists at all, specifically for those old wood bloomers. Once you understand the hidden life of the plant, it becomes a fascinating journey rather than a chore. An old wood hydrangea operates on a very specific, quiet yearly schedule that is completely different from how we naturally assume a plant works. We tend to think that plants wake up in the spring, make buds, flower in the summer, and then go to sleep. But the old wood hydrangea is always thinking one full year ahead. Here is the beautiful sequence it follows. The plant blooms for you in the early to mid-summer, giving you that spectacular show of color on your patio or in your garden borders. Then, just a few weeks later, right in the late summer while the weather is still warm, and you are perhaps sitting outside enjoying a cold drink, the plant begins doing the most important work it will do all year.
Deep within its stems, it is quietly forming the flower buds for next summer. These microscopic beginnings of flowers develop through August and into September, and then they simply sit there. They remain tiny and dormant, bravely riding out the crisp fall air, the freezing winter temperatures, the ice and the snow, all while clinging perfectly securely to the ends of the bare, woody stems. When the gentle warmth of the following spring finally arrives, those exact same buds, which were created almost an entire year earlier, begin to swell, push out new green leaves, and eventually open into the spectacular blooms you have been waiting for. I want you to just sit with that idea for a moment, because it changes how you look at your garden entirely. It means that the breathtaking flowers you will enjoy next June were actually born the previous August. They spend 9 or 10 months patiently waiting on the plant, exposed to the elements, trusting that they will make it to the summer.
When you picture that timeline, you can immediately see what it does to your pruning window. Right after the plant finishes its big summer display, there is a very brief pause in the action. The old flowers are fading and turning brown, but the new hidden buds for next year have not yet been formed. That short period is your golden window. That is the one safe moment in the entire calendar year where you can gently cut and shape the plant without destroying anything, simply because next year's flowers do not exist yet. You cannot ruin what is not there. But the moment the calendar turns to August and those new buds begin to solidify inside the stems, the window softly closes. From that moment onward, every single cut you make below those buds is physically removing next year's flowers from the plant. This is exactly why waiting until the crisp autumn months to tidy up the garden is so devastating for these specific plants. The well-meaning gardener who goes out in October or November, or worse, waits until a mild day in late winter to cut everything back so the garden looks perfectly neat, is making a tragic mistake. They are doing their heavy pruning at the precise moment when next summer's glorious flowers are sitting right there, fully formed, on the stems. They trim the bush down into a lovely, neat, tidy dome. They gather up all the branches, and without realizing it, they throw an entire summer of beauty right into the compost bin. Then spring arrives. The plant wakes up. It pushes out a tremendous amount of lush, healthy green foliage because the root system is incredibly strong and the plant itself was never harmed. But the blooms are completely absent, and the gardener stands there, hands on their hips, wondering what on earth went wrong. They might think they have bad luck, or that the soil is poor, or that they bought a defective plant. But it is none of those things.
It is simply the result of a well-intentioned haircut given at the wrong time. It is the single most common reason that perfectly healthy, vigorous hydrangeas refuse to bloom. But you do not have to just take my word for this. I do not want you to just listen to me and trust an abstract concept. I want you to experience the joy of seeing it for yourself, because the physical proof is sitting right out there in your garden today. Here is how we make this concept completely real. Sometime today, when the weather is pleasant, I want you to step outside. Take a slow walk over to your old wood hydrangea, whether it is planted in the ground or sitting in a beautiful terracotta pot. We are going to find next year's flowers together because they are already there, waiting for you to discover them. Here is exactly where you need to look. Reach out and gently take hold of one of the main stems. Trace your fingers from the very tip of the stem, moving slowly downward toward the soil. As you move down, you will notice that at each point where a leaf joins the main stem, there is a little junction. It is a tiny notch where the leaf stalk meets the older wood. In the gardening world, we call this small intersection the leaf axil. I want you to look very closely right into that little pocket. Tuck tightly into those axils, all up and down the stem, you will start to see them. They are small, plump, very distinct little buds. On many of the big leaf hydrangeas, especially the ones that produce blue or pink flowers, these buds will have a beautiful reddish or pinkish tint to them. On other varieties, they might be a bright fresh green and somewhat pointed, hugging very tightly against the bark of the stem. If you compare them to the tiny, flat buds that just produce leaves, you will see a major difference. These flower buds look different. They are fatter, wider, and they look much more deliberate and substantial. They feel solid to the touch. My friends, you are looking at next year's flowers. That is not a metaphor or a guess. Each one of those plump little buds sitting quietly in a leaf axil right now is a massive mop head or a delicate lace cap just waiting to happen. They will sit exactly in that spot, holding on tight through the falling autumn leaves, through the hard frosts, and through the heavy winter snows. And next summer, they will swell with the spring rains and open into the breathtaking blooms you have been dreaming of. Depending on exactly where you live and the climate of your specific garden, these little hidden treasures may already be very obvious and easy to spot, or they might just be beginning to swell. In the hottest part of midsummer, right after the main bloom fades, they are busy forming deep inside the tissue. By August and stretching into the early fall, they become absolutely unmistakable. The reason I want you to go out and physically touch them today is because the second you see those buds with your own two eyes, this entire process changes for you. It completely stops being an abstract gardening rule that you have to memorize and stress over. It becomes a physical reality that you can see, touch, and most importantly, protect. Because now, when we talk about the safe way to prune, it will make complete, absolute sense to you. The golden rule is simply this: you only ever make a cut above those plump buds. You never, ever cut below them. Every single bud that remains below your pruning shears stays safely on the plant and transforms into a flower next summer. Every single bud that you accidentally cut off and drops to the ground goes into the bin, and that flower is lost forever. It really is that simple, that visual, and that easy to manage. This is not some arbitrary deadline that gardening experts invented to make things seem urgent.
It is a biological, physical fact sitting right there on the stems and the leaf axils. Once you have found those buds and seen them for yourself, let us talk about exactly how to make your cuts in a way that is entirely safe, without sacrificing a single blossom. We are going to break this down into two very gentle levels. The first is a completely safe, practically effortless level that every single gardener can do on any type of hydrangea with absolute zero risk. The second level is the actual shaping process, which is specifically for the old wood plants during this late summer window. Let us start with the safe, easy level, because quite frankly, this is the only thing most of you actually need to do. This process is called deadheading. Deadheading simply means removing the spent, faded, papery flower heads from the summer that are turning brown and looking a bit untidy. And here is the truly beautiful part. When done correctly, deadheading is 100% safe on every single type of hydrangea, and it completely protects every single future bud. It is a wonderfully relaxing task that you can do with a cup of coffee in one hand and a small pair of snips in the other. Here is the exact stress-free technique. Gently take hold of the old spent bloom. Follow its delicate little stem downward just a very short way. You are looking for the first full, healthy pair of leaves or the first pair of plump green buds sitting just below that dead flower. When you find them, you simply make a crisp little cut just above that pair of leaves. That is all there is to it. You are removing the ugly brown flower head to make the plant look tidy, and you are touching absolutely nothing else. By doing this, you are cutting well above all of those precious future flower buds we just found lower down on the stem.
This simple act tidies up the plant beautifully, making your patio or garden bed look cared for. On some varieties, it even gently encourages a little more fresh green growth. And best of all, it costs you absolutely nothing in terms of future blooms. If deadheading is the only pruning you ever do to your hydrangeas for the rest of your gardening life, you will never ruin your flowers. So, if you ever feel nervous, or if your hands are tired and you just want an easy day in the garden, this is your move. Just snip off the dead flowers just above a healthy pair of leaves, brush off your hands, and call it a wonderful day's work. Now, let us move to the second level, which is actual pruning. This is for when you need to shape the plant, carefully control its overall size, and keep the interior of the shrub healthy and breathing. Remember, this more involved pruning is for old wood plants only, and it absolutely must happen in that short window before August arrives. If you need to do this, here is how you do it properly, safely, and without any heavy strain, step by step. Step 1 always begins with what we call the 3 Ds: dead, damaged, and diseased wood. Your first task is to slowly walk around the plant and inspect it. Look for any stem that is completely dead, broken from a heavy storm, or looks diseased or rotting. You want to trace those specific stems all the way down to the ground and cut them completely out right at the base. This step is incredibly healthy for the plant, and it is safe to do on any hydrangea at any time of the year, so it should always be your starting point. If you are looking at a gray, woody stem and you are not quite sure if it is dead or just sleeping, there is a very easy trick. Simply use your thumbnail to lightly scrape a tiny bit of the bark. If you see bright, moist green underneath, that stem is alive and well, so leave it alone. If it is brown, dry, and brittle beneath the bark, it is fully dead and should be gently removed to make room for fresh growth. Step 2 is about improving the plant's health, and the rule here is to thin but never to top. If your shrub has become incredibly dense and crowded in the center, looking like a tangled mess of sticks, it cannot get enough sunlight or air circulation, which can invite mildew and disease. The correct and gentle way to fix this is to select a few of the very oldest, thickest, most woody stems, and remove them entirely by cutting them all the way down to the soil line. You might need a small pruning saw or long-handled loppers for this to save your wrists. By removing just a few of these bulky old canes from the bottom, you instantly open up the entire center of the plant. Air can suddenly flow freely through the leaves, and dappled sunlight can reach the interior. This beautifully rejuvenates the shrub while leaving all of the younger, more productive stems that are absolutely loaded with buds completely intact and ready to flower. What you must absolutely never do is take a pair of hedge clippers and shear the whole plant off straight across the top, as if you were giving a flat top haircut to a boxwood hedge. Topping a hydrangea like this is a disaster. It instantly cuts off every single terminal bud where the biggest flowers form. It completely ruins the elegant, natural fountain shape of the shrub, and it forces the plant to push out weak, spindly, ugly growth that cannot support the weight of future flowers. Remember, always thin the crowd from the bottom, never chop off the heads across the top. Step 3 is about making the actual shaping cuts. When you do find a stem that is simply sticking out too far over your pathway or brushing against your patio furniture, you need to shorten it.
Trace that stem down until you find a healthy, plump pair of buds, or a bud that is facing outward away from the center of the bush. Make your cut just 1/4 of an inch above that bud. Try to make the cut at a slight, gentle angle. This is a lovely little detail because it allows rainwater to easily run off the cut surface, which helps prevent rot and disease from settling into the open wound. By choosing a bud that faces outward, you ensure that when that bud wakes up and starts growing a new branch next spring, it will grow out toward the light, keeping the middle of the bush beautifully open and uncluttered. And the golden rule applies here just as we discussed. Cut above the buds, always above. Step 4 is perhaps the most important for those of us who want a low-maintenance garden: the principle of restraint. You should never remove more than about 1/3 of the plant's total mass in a single year.
Hydrangeas are wonderful, sturdy plants, but they do not enjoy being aggressively chopped down to the ground. Taking away too much of their structure in one go causes them immense stress, and a stressed plant will focus all its energy on survival, completely forgetting about producing beautiful flowers for you. Even if you are working within the correct late summer window, cutting too hard will cost you blooms. The best approach for a relaxing gardening experience is simple. When in doubt, take less. You can always come back next year and thin it out a little more. Before we move on, I want to share two very quick practical notes about your tools, because taking care of your hands and your plants go together. First, always try to use sharp bypass pruners. These are the kind where the two curved blades slide smoothly past each other, exactly like a pair of sharp scissors. They make a beautifully clean, precise cut that heals very quickly.
Try to avoid using anvil pruners, which have one sharp blade that comes down and crushes against a flat metal plate. Anvil pruners crush and tear the delicate outer layers of the stem, leaving a ragged wound that struggles to heal and invites pests. Second, take a moment to wipe your blades with a little bit of rubbing alcohol or a mild bleach solution before you start, and maybe once or twice as you move between different plants. This takes only seconds, but it guarantees that you are not accidentally carrying microscopic fungal spores from a sick branch directly into the fresh cuts of a healthy one. And finally, always try to do your pruning on a dry, sunny day. Pruning while the leaves and stems are wet is a very easy way to spread disease. So, that is the complete, stress-free method for your old wood hydrangeas.
Start with the dead and damaged wood. Thin out the old trunks from the very bottom. Make careful cuts just above outward-facing buds. Never remove more than a third of the bush. And use clean, sharp, comfortable tools on a dry day. It is a slow, methodical, and deeply satisfying process. Now, if you discovered earlier that you have a new wood hydrangea, those beautiful cone-shaped panicles, or the giant white smooth types, everything I just explained about timing flips completely upside down. Your instructions for right now, in the late summer and fall, are refreshingly and wonderfully simple. Stop. Put the pruning shears down. Go make yourself a cup of tea and enjoy your garden. This is absolutely not your season for pruning, and cutting these specific plants right now will actively work against you and ruin your display. Remember, these new wood bloomers create their flower buds next spring on fresh green growth that has not even appeared yet.
The ticking clock of August that we just spent so much time discussing does not apply to them in the slightest. Their correct and safest pruning time is in the late winter or very early spring, while the plant is entirely dormant and sleeping, well before any new green leaves begin to push out. That chore is months and months away, so you can completely put it out of your mind for now. If you were to go out and start hacking at a panicle hydrangea in midsummer or early fall, you would be making a frustrating mistake. At this time of year, these plants are either currently blooming in all their glory, or they have just finished putting on their show on this season's growth. If you cut them back now, you are literally cutting off the very stems that are providing your late summer color, or you are removing the elegant dried flower heads that can look so beautiful covered in a light dusting of winter snow.
You gain absolutely nothing in terms of plant health, and you lose the visual interest of the blooms. So the schedule is beautifully opposite. Old wood gets cut in the summer, new wood waits patiently for late winter. However, you are not entirely left out of the fun if you own a new wood hydrangea. There is still one lovely, relaxing task you can safely do right now if you want to spend a little time tending to your patio plants. You can always deadhead them exactly the way I described earlier. Just take your snips and remove the spent, faded blooms right above the first healthy pair of leaves. And of course, the rule of the 3 Ds always applies. You can safely remove a completely dead, snapped, or diseased branch from any plant, anywhere in your garden, on any day of the year. Beyond that minor tidying up, your only job is to sit back, enjoy the beautiful changing colors of the foliage, and wait for the cold days of winter before you even think about shaping the shrub. Let us briefly touch on the rebloomers. Those wonderful endless summer types that give us flowers on both old and new wood. They truly are the most forgiving plants in the garden, making them perfect for large patio containers where you want consistent color without a lot of worry. Because they possess the magical ability to bloom on both types of wood, it is practically impossible to completely ruin their flowering potential with bad timing. A light shaping or a session of relaxing deadheading right now in the late summer is perfectly fine and will keep them looking tidy. But they do have one special rule, and it is a trap that catches many well-meaning gardeners. You must completely stop deadheading these rebloomers by mid to late fall. As the days get significantly shorter and cooler, you must resist the urge to clip off the fading flowers. Here is why. Making cuts at the very tips of the branches late in the season can accidentally trick the plant into waking up the dormant buds resting just below the cut. The plant thinks it is time to grow again. Those delicate buds begin to swell with water, and then the first hard freezing frost of the season arrives and instantly kills them. So, enjoy deadheading your rebloomers all through the warm summer months to encourage more flowers. But as soon as the crisp chill of autumn arrives, leave them completely alone. Now, let us talk about a situation that many of you might be facing right now. What if you are listening to this and you realize that the August window has already closed? What if it is late September or October? Or what if you honestly cannot tell what type of hydrangea you have and you are terrified of making a mistake? Or perhaps your eyes are just not quite as sharp as they used to be, and you are not confident that you can spot those tiny buds in the leaf axils. I am going to give you the most honest answer in the gardening world, and it is the exact opposite of the stressful, high-pressure advice you usually hear. If you are not absolutely certain that you are safely inside the correct time window, do not prune. Just wait. I mean that with complete sincerity. The wisest experts at University Extension Services all agree on this one incredibly reassuring sentence. If you have missed the ideal pruning window, it is vastly better to wait than to prune incorrectly. Leaving a hydrangea entirely unpruned for a single year is completely harmless. In fact, the plant does not mind at all. It might look a tiny bit overgrown or a little rustic and wild, but the root system will be strong, the leaves will be lush, and most importantly, it will bloom magnificently for you next summer. But picking up those shears and cutting blindly at the wrong time guarantees that you will lose the entire flush of flowers. And if you make that same well-intentioned mistake year after year, constantly cutting away the buds before they can open, you will eventually weaken the plant's overall vigor. So, when you feel doubt creeping in, the safest, most productive thing you can do is leave the tools in the shed. Doing nothing is a perfectly valid, highly successful gardening strategy. We must always remember that no hydrangea in the world actually needs pruning to survive or even to bloom. We only prune for our own aesthetic preferences, to keep the shrub a certain size or shape to fit our patios and garden paths. The plant itself is perfectly happy to grow wild. If you do decide to wait this year, here is a wonderful little tip to make sure you never miss the window again. Go inside and grab your calendar for next year right now. Mark a big, bright circle in the month of July, right around the time you expect your hydrangea to finish its spectacular main bloom. Write down a little reminder for yourself that this is your pruning window. If you know what type of plant you have, write it down on that calendar page so you never have to guess again. And if you still do not know, that is perfectly fine too. Next summer, pull up a comfortable chair, pour a drink, and just watch the plant. Observe how the flowers form and what shape they take, and the plant will reveal its identity to you. If it produces big round mops or flat lace caps just once in the early summer, it is an old wood plant, and you will know exactly when to act. Now, I want to share a piece of advanced knowledge with you, something that goes beyond just knowing when to cut. This is a crucial step that many experts completely overlook, but it is the secret to guaranteeing the most breathtaking display of flowers you have ever seen. We have talked extensively about saving the buds from the blades of your pruning shears. But saving them from the shears is only half the battle.
We also have to save them from the weather, and we have to give them the strength to survive. Those tiny, precious buds that are forming in the leaf axils of your old wood plants right now, during the hot days of August, are being built entirely with the energy the plant is producing today. The plant is working incredibly hard internally, even if it looks like it is just sitting there. You need to support that invisible labor. The most important thing you can do for your hydrangea in late summer, far more important than pruning, is to keep the plant watered deeply and consistently. The late summer heat can be incredibly taxing on broadleafed plants, and especially on hydrangeas growing in containers on a hot patio. If the plant dries out deeply in August, it will not have the hydraulic pressure or the energy reserves to form strong, viable flower buds for next year.
You do not want to just sprinkle the leaves. You want to water deeply at the base of the plant, so the moisture reaches the entire root zone. To help lock that vital moisture into the soil and keep the roots cool, spread a generous 2 to 3 inch layer of organic mulch around the base of the plant. You can use shredded bark, compost, or even aged leaf mold. Just make sure to pull the mulch a few inches away from the actual woody stems so you do not invite rot. A hydrangea that goes into the autumn well watered and comfortably mulched will set significantly more buds, and those buds will be much stronger and better equipped to handle the winter. You are not pruning. You are simply providing the perfect environment for the plant to do its most important work. But there is one more danger to those buds, and it is the heartbreak of the spring frost. You can prune perfectly in July, you can water deeply in August, and your plant can hold on to beautiful, plump buds all winter long. But if a deceptive warm spell in early spring tricks those buds into opening too early, a sudden late frost will freeze the tender new growth and kill the flowers before they ever fully emerge. This is especially true for those critical terminal buds at the very tips of the branches, which produce the largest, most spectacular blooms. If you live in an area prone to late spring freezes, you must protect the buds you worked so hard to save. Keep a close eye on the weather forecast in the early spring. If you see a hard frost predicted after the buds have started to swell and show green, take action. If your hydrangea is in a lightweight patio container, the solution is beautifully simple. Gently slide the pot closer to the warm brick wall of your house, or pull it into an unheated garage or covered porch just for the night. The radiant heat from your home is often enough to protect them.
If the shrub is planted in the ground, take a few minutes in the late afternoon to drape a layer of breathable frost cloth, an old bed sheet, or some burlap over the plant. Make sure the fabric drapes all the way to the soil line to trap the radiant heat rising from the earth. Just remember to gently remove the covering the next morning when the sun comes up and the temperatures rise so the plant doesn't overheat. This simple act of protection, combined with correct pruning, is the absolute key to unlocking the full potential of your garden. Let us slowly pull all of these threads together so you feel completely confident and relaxed about caring for your plants. Gardening should never feel like a burden. It should be a source of pride and tranquility. But before we summarize, I want to ask you to do one small, helpful thing. Think for a moment about a friend, a neighbor, or a family member who has a massive, beautiful, healthy green hydrangea in their yard that never, ever seems to produce a single flower. We all know someone who struggles with this. They are the person who meticulously cuts their shrub back to a perfect little dome every single autumn to make their yard look tidy. And then they stand there in June, heartbroken, wondering why they have no blooms. You have the power to solve their mystery. Share this information with them. Tell them the secret of the timing. They have almost certainly never heard the truth about when those buds are formed. Here is the entire philosophy of hydrangea care, distilled into a peaceful, easy-to-remember process. First, know your plant. Understand its gentle rhythm. Second, only cut during the correct window of time. And third, always, always cut above the buds.
If you have an old wood hydrangea, the classic mop heads, the delicate lace caps, or the deeply lobed oak leaf varieties, your window of opportunity is open right now in the hazy days of midsummer, and it gently closes as August begins and the new buds set. Take a relaxing hour in the garden to deadhead the spent brown flowers, snipping just above a healthy pair of leaves. If the plant needs to be shaped or reduced, slowly take out the dead, damaged, and diseased wood first. Then, thin out a few of the oldest, thickest stems right down to the bottom to let the plant breathe. When making cuts on the remaining stems, always cut slightly above a bud that faces outward, and exercise restraint by never taking away more than a third of the beautiful plant. If you have a new wood hydrangea, the hardy panicles or the giant smooth snowballs, this is a time of rest for you. This is not your moment to prune. You can tidy up the dead flowers if you wish, and you can always remove a broken branch. But otherwise, simply let the plant be. Wait patiently for the deep dormancy of late winter or early spring before you begin shaping. And finally, the most comforting rule of all. If you find yourself confused, if you have lost track of the weeks, or if you simply missed the golden window, give yourself permission to do absolutely nothing. Put the pruning shears safely away in the garage. A plant left unpruned for a year will look a little softer, a little wilder, but it will reward you with a spectacular show of flowers. A year of no pruning beats a year with no flowers every single time. The beauty of a hydrangea lies in its longevity. These plants can bloom faithfully and generously for decades. Think of that massive blue mophead growing by the front porch, the one that has been there since you moved in, or a cutting you nurtured from a friend's garden. They are living memories.
Do not let one single mistimed cut, made with the very best of intentions during an October afternoon cleanup, quietly rob you of an entire summer of joy and color. Now you know the secret of the window. You understand the biology of the plant. You know how to nurture it with water and protect it from the frost. You have all the tools you need to enjoy a breathtaking low-maintenance garden. So, when you have a moment, take a leisurely stroll out to your hydrangea. Gently run your fingers along the stems, find those plump little buds resting in the leaf axils, and marvel at the incredible foresight of nature. Then, either carefully make your cuts above them today, or put the shears away with confidence until the winter winds blow. May your garden bring you endless peace and brilliant color.